Alright everyone, today I'm talking about a topic that I've been kind of avoiding discussing directly, but at this point I feel like I'm remiss if I don't address it. And that's the topic of food shortages. There's a couple reasons I've been avoiding this topic. For one, I figure if you've watched any of my other videos, if you're following what I'm doing on Facebook over at Trailer Park Homestead, then I figure the idea of potential food shortages is kind of implied in everything that I'm doing. Additionally, I don't want this channel to be doom reporting. That's not the direction I'm trying to go with this. I'm not interested in fear mongering. In fact, I'm trying to hope monger. That's more what I'm about, is hope mongering rather than fear mongering. And a lot of the YouTube channels that are discussing the possibility of food shortages, well, I'd say they are getting into their realm of doom reporting. You know, they have the title in all capitals, food shortage apocalypse. They'll have some fancy graphic, and you know they're yelling at you about how terrible things are, and well, things might not be great here in the near future. I mean, I can't say that for sure. I'm not gonna tell you that I know what's coming, but I know what I have seen, and what I have seen is that discussion of food shortages. It's migrated off of those, you know, the more doom reporting side of the internet, of the forums and the YouTube channels, to mainstream news outlets, CNN, NPR, the Washington Post. These are all outlets that have discussed the possibility of food shortages. And, well, I don't trust any of those outlets. That being said, when even they start talking about a topic, I think it can't be avoided anymore. So, have some notes here from an NPR article from a couple days ago. The U.S. meat supply is perilously close to shortage. The Smithfield pork plant in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, just shut down after having apparently half of the coronavirus cases in South Dakota are from employees in that plant. JBS temporarily closed their Souderton, Pennsylvania beef plant, and they reduced production at their Greeley, Colorado facility. Additional protein plants in Colorado, South Dakota, Iowa, Pennsylvania, and Mississippi have all either shut down or reduced production. Tyson has reduced their production of chicken. And I've heard multiple reports of Michigan cattle ranchers who can't find any processors to take their beef. The same thing in the pork industry. There's a lot of farmers producing meat. They can't get their meat processed. And what that means, you know, they have budgeted, okay, I'm going to raise this beef or this pork or whatever up to this certain point, and then I'm going to sell it to the processor. Well, now they can't sell it to the processor. Well, they don't have the budget to just keep feeding it. I mean, a lot of these animals, they're at the point where they need to be slaughtered. Like, it's not healthy for them to, keep feeding them. They don't have the budget for it. So this is a lot bigger of it's not just that the farmers can't sell their meat right now and okay, well, maybe they'll be able to do it in a month. No, a lot of them are going to have to call their herds. They're not going to get any profit from that. That meat is not going to make it to market, and it's not like they can just spin up production again in a couple weeks or a month. Dairy farmers are dumping approximately 3.7 million gallons of milk daily. There are fruit and vegetable growers in Florida and California. They can't find the migrant laborers to harvest their crops. A lot of them are having to till their crops under, destroy the crops. A lot of this is because of there's been a sharp decrease in commercial demand for food. The restaurants, the schools, all these institutions are closed now. So a lot of the food producers, they don't have the traditional markets where they've been selling their product. They can't sell it there anymore. And it's the way our supply chain is designed. It's not like they can just shift easily on a dime to selling at the grocery store. Like eventually they may be able to do that, but they can't just do that overnight. Also, on the international front, Vietnam, at the end of March, they put a ban on all rice exports. That's the world's third largest rice producer. Now, a few days ago, they did lift that ban, so that's a bit of good news. However, they have monthly quotas on the amount of rice that they can export now. Once they meet that quota, they're not going to export anymore for that month. India's Rice Exporters Association is halting all new contracts. As I understand it, they'll continue with the contracts that are currently in place, but there won't be any additional ones. Cambodia is banning the export of rice and fish, and they're encouraging the population to start gardens. Egypt has implemented a 3-month ban on the export of legumes. Saudi Arabia and Egypt have both gone on buying sprees to boost their national food stockpiles. At the same time, a lot of food-producing nations are, as I said, limiting their exports. Now, as I've been researching this, I've seen a fair number of articles. A lot of these are older, a week or so old. I haven't seen as much of this talking point lately, but they're saying, don't worry, there's no food shortage. It's just that we have too much food in the wrong place. That was from an NPR article. All right, listen here, dumbass. If the food is not in the right place, that means that there is a food shortage where the food is not. That's pretty fucking simple. But, of course, journalists, well, there's a reason why the American people even trust Congress more than the media now. The supply chain is being hit at multiple points. The demand from schools, restaurants, and other institutions has plummeted. It's non-existent now. All the schools are shut down. Restaurants are, either closed or only doing takeout. A lot of people, myself and Courtney included, we're not going to restaurants. The demand at grocery stores has spiked at the same time. I'm sure you've seen it. It's been not as bad the last few weeks, but when the lockdowns first came, I'm sure you saw meat aisles with nothing, pasta aisles, nothing on the shelves. A lot of processing plants have been shut down or they've reduced production, and food exporting nations are either halting or placing limits on the amount of food that they'll export. So it's not just one link in the chain that's been disrupted. There's a lot of different points in our food distribution network that are being weakened due to COVID-19. We also need to remember, and so many people are so woefully unaware of this. They're so used to, you just go to the grocery store and the food's there and you don't have to worry about it. This knowledge is pretty much a reason why I'm a prepper. And I understand that this applies to more than just the food distribution network, but right now that's the topic that we're discussing. The food supply system is a fragile system, and it requires every component to work perfectly for the system to function. Right now, there are disruptions hitting multiple points of that system, causing it to stumble. I really hope that these disruptions are small scale and temporary, and there is a small amount of redundancy built into the system. While I was doing some research, one of the so-called experts was saying how 3 or 4 plants, meat production plants, they can halt their production or reduce their production, and it's not going to cause a serious system. However, there is a breaking point. once you start getting more and more links in the chain that are being disrupted, it's gonna have a compounding effect. The same thing is going on with food exporters. There's a lot of countries, they don't need to limit their exports, but when Moldova, for instance, Moldova has limited exports. Apparently they don't need to do that. But Russia and the Ukraine, two countries that they look up to, that they look to for guidance, they've both limited exports. So now the Moldovans are like, okay, well, we better limit exports as well. If the Russians and the Ukrainians are doing it, that same ripple effect goes through the international markets. That same ripple effect can go through the domestic food production market. So there's a lot of weaknesses in our food supply system, and those weaknesses are being exposed now. I really hope that this all resolves itself pretty soon. I hope that I don't have to rely on the food that I've been starting to grow for my survival. I mean, quite frankly, the food shortages happen soon enough. I might not have enough food stocked up until it's time to harvest. I do know that the UN has been discussing the issue of food shortages. I've heard that the Department of Homeland Security and FEMA have been discussing domestic food shortages. There was a leaked memo in China from the Chinese Communist Party telling the party elites that they need to stock up on 3 to 6 months of food. So this idea, this concern, it's gone beyond the dark, scary corners of the internet, and it's in the mainstream now. And you need to take notice. We all need to take notice of this. But enough of the doom and gloom. It's time to monger a little bit of hope. I really hope that you've started a garden. If you've been following this channel, you've seen what I've done, and I'm going to keep expanding it. I have some plans for some container gardens I'm going to put in. I want to do a couple more of the pallet raised beds. You may think that you don't have the room for a garden. Well, that's the whole point of this channel. I don't have the room to have a homestead. I live in a trailer park, and yet I'm growing everything I can. You can too. Even if you live in an apartment, if you have a balcony, if you have a windowsill, you can start container gardens. You can get grow lights and do hydroponics or aquaponics inside in a closet. There's plenty of ways to produce food wherever you're at. You just need to get creative and do a little bit of research. So I implore you to do that. And if the best case scenario, if my hopes are realized and these food shortages never materialize, then you will have learned something. You will have had a little bit of fun growing some food. And I guarantee you that food's going to be better quality than what you can buy at the store. But if these do materialize, then whatever food you produce, that could be the difference between life and death for you and your household. So, in conclusion, I'm imploring you to take responsibility for your own food production, as much of it as you have the means to do. Start a garden, become friends with a farmer, make friends at your local farmer's market, develop means to insulate yourself from the possibility of food shortages. The time to start your victory garden is now. Until next time.